1991, and I succeeded him. We come from the northwest of Cameroon and to the southwest of the chief town of Northwest is a town called Mbengui, where I hail from. We have a council in Mbengui which you can liken to the Tyrone council. And then further south is a region where I come from. Giddy comes from there too, and I come from there too. My father comes from there. It is essentially an agricultural population that we have. 85 to 90% of them they live on subsistence farming. And the problems we have actually include the possibility of evacuating our agricultural produce to urban centers for sale, because that's actually our economic empowerment. We can't. And then, I mean, if I say it is difficult for us to evacuate our agricultural produce, it is because of the poor state of roads. We don't have, ever since I came to the States, I've not noticed some power failure like we notice in our country. Once a day at least, the power must go off. So those are the type of things we are very used to. And now that people like us believe in the supreme being, God, I want to tell you that in Cameroon and in Kai region as a whole, we are essentially Christians, embracing virtually all the denominations that you can think of. But we believe in ecumenism, where we bring together in churches for worship. We have a Baptist church, the New Apostolic Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Catholic Church, and more recently there is one they call the Global Frontiers Church. And the Global Frontiers Church, they came and built an orphanage in our area. It's an orphanage operating there now. I don't know, they have about 30 to 40 orphans they're taking care of, with the means they have at their disposal. I think that would be as much as I can present my area to you. But I will be ready to answer some questions if I didn't tackle most of the things I wanted in detail. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. This is a cultural exchange, and in this situation, I want it to be very relaxed so we can learn something. So when we come out of here, we must have learned something. At this point, I'm begging each and every one of us to think at least of a question so we can make it fun and more relaxing. I love it.
I have a question for you. I grew up in South Georgia where we grow cotton and peanuts. What is your agriculture? What type of products do you grow?
Okay, peanuts, we might not boast of it as a marketable commodity, but we have some. We boast of coffee, we boast of the oil palm.
Yes.
And now we have gotten ourselves involved with cocoa.
Oh,
There's cocoa being planted.
very nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Then for the food crops. I have plantains, I don't know whether you know what they are, and coconuts. We produce a lot. Thank you, man. Yes.
Do you have a lot of exports to America? Do you know if you export like cocoa beans or?
Yeah, Cameroon as a whole produces a lot of cocoa. A lot of it. And I know a lot of cocoa and a lot of coffee. I know that an American is used to coming to our region, the northwest of Cameroon, to buy Cameroonian coffee and bring it here. Yes, I know that now. Cocoa, yes, we produce a lot of cocoa. But Cameroon is about the second producer after Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. They are second in the amount of cocoa we produce in West Africa. So there's quite a good quantity that is shipped to here.
We eat a lot of chocolate.
Yes, oh yeah. One thing which I must say too is that we would have preferred in Cameroon to be sending to you finished products.
Yeah, that's the best.
We send you cocoa, you refine it and send us chocolate. It sounds a little funny. We would have loved to send you chocolate to you.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I wonder, how did you become interested in chemistry?
What were you interested in doing yourself? Because it's just a matter of you go to school and then you opt. It didn't come to you. You start liking it and then you just go into it. But I must confess that I had a good teacher. I had a good teacher who gave me a good foundation. And I tried, when it was my turn, to give a good foundation to my students, and that's why, as I said, I have more than 100 of them. Chemistry, all you need in chemistry is to know the fundamental principles. Once you understand them, it comes.
If I may chip into one thing that His Majesty did not mention to you, is the education system in Africa is very, very intellectually elitist. And by that I mean that they discriminate against the students who are either average or below average. There's no room for mediocrity. So what actually happens is that people like him, they gravitate towards those areas because they just stand out. So you go to school, you're making high points, immediately they almost like conscript you, and that's what you go into. He wouldn't have had to identify chemistry per se, but it would have been something like, you are good, we want you. And so that's how that works, and it's almost like this natural selection process. But intellectual elitism is something that they get surprised when they come to America. What they find in America is that the American education, there are students who study from Cameroon. Under the system he was teaching in, and under the system he went to school, that they would have already told them you are no good in this area. And so they would send them to areas like history, English literature, and so on and so forth. When they come to the United States, they are, they become some of the best pharmacologists and pharmacists. Because in the United States, everybody is treated equally. You are given a chance. So there's no such thing as, oh, you can't even cope. At age 15 in Cameroon, you would have already been thrown in one class or the other. And that's age 15. I'm asking myself, who at age 15 knows what he wants to become when he grows up?
Did you have any particular difficulties in chemistry?
Well, I have a friend who he was a chemistry major, and it's not something that really interested me. It didn't interest me. But to your point, in some ways, I can find that to be maybe a little better. Just to have the high expectations. I don't think they should be discriminated against if they're not really good, but I think it's good to have high expectations and, push for the best. So,
Yeah, I mean, not to argue with you, but the problem I see with that is this. You see, students have different times that their intellectual clock ticks, and there are times they are off. So if you catch a student at that low point, you already say you're not good. And that, to me, I think that's quite a critique. Because the United States system, I'm telling you, when we come here, the first thing they tell us is, our friends back home, that's what they tell me. We're going to do work in multiple jobs. And that already is a down. Then you begin to think to yourself, okay, so it must be watered down. But at the end of the day, who went to the moon? It wasn't, because the Cameroonian system came from the British and the French. It's not the French who went to the moon, it's not the British who went to the moon. Actually, it's the American. So there's something good about it, otherwise it wouldn't be working the way it does work. And I think I love that idea of embracing everybody, and, But in fact, think about where he went, how he taught the students he taught. They didn't have good laboratories. This is something they are lacking, generally speaking, across the board. A student might have seen a beaker for the first time, and that's about the only equipment they have in their lab. So the facilities are not there. The question of whether it is a choice or not does not even come up, because they will have to work with those rudimentary materials. But that should not fool you, because the students he produced will be among the best anyway they go.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, then what happens to those students who aren't accelerated into those programs?
What happens to them?
Like in America, what happens with them? Profit.
No, the question she's asking is about what happened to those students in Cameroon.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
No, well, I mean, if you are sent to, they know that you have competencies in I don't know what, they send you there. They go there, they excel. They might not be amongst the top, but at least they will have a first degree. Yes.
But you're also asking about those who were not chosen.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. The ones who were not chosen. Meaning that, I just said the students who typically, they say you are no good, you can't do chemistry, you can't do math, you can't do physics. What actually happens is that they wind up in the humanities. And when they wind up in the humanities, the question then becomes, what are the chances of employability if you're in the humanities? So it's almost in a way, they will cut them off, and now so they belong in this area, so their future is already colored. You can see that it's tainted, because where do they go next? You see, whereas they produce the chemists, the physicists, and so on, all of them, they're going places. What happens to this other one? So when they come here, it's an opportunity for them. Because as soon as they get here, somebody tells them, you know what? You can do pharmacy. The person goes, I was so bad in chemistry. My teacher told me I would never do chemistry. So I said, no, just go, you take chemistry 101. And they go to chemistry 101. Someone's like, what? I can understand something at least. Because when the teaching that's going on in Cameroon is basically that which means that, that it's taught to good students. Because you have had to be good to be there. And that is how it goes. But it's a problem that I feel like is so rooted in the colonial system. Because colonial authorities did not have many opportunities for people. The few schools they had were themselves very, very selective. And so when they took over after the colonial era, they continued to be same. And it turns out, of course, those of them from the royal family, for His Majesty, I can tell you, he didn't tell me this, but this is what happened. If you came from his family and went to school, it would have been your personal motivation, because royalty would not belong to school as such. Royalty was supposed to, in fact, when the colonial time, during the colonial time, they didn't want the children from royal families to go to school because they would be beaten, and nobody wanted that they should touch a prince. So they wouldn't send them to school. So later on, as time went by, then they were able to then send them, because they now started understanding the meaning of education. So he himself would have had to make a lot of personal effort, because it wasn't like, because the other ones who went there, those who were lacking, this is the only way out of poverty. For him, he didn't have to worry about that. So going there was a personal motivation. The same way you have the children of politicians, children of this and that, those elite individuals, they go to school out of their own personal drive. It's not that they must. And so for someone like him, he is exceptional. He has to be exceptional.
Is there a class system in place?
Class. Nothing close to India. There's even no such thing. Yeah, but I think your question is coming from, because I said from royalty. The royal families are not many. In fact, in some areas, it may only be one king. In some, there may be a few more. but it is not, they don't then look low on others as such. So there isn't a class as such, not a structured society.
And the native language, is it primarily French, or is it a mixture, or what?
No, Cameroon has two official languages, French and English. French spoken by about 4/5 of the country. They were, I don't want to use the word colonized, but they were under French trusteeship. And then we, of the English, were under British trusteeship. We lost 1/5 of the whole country. So we speak both languages, but education is primarily in French, in the French zone, and in English. But then the country practices bilingualism such that where there is English as a dominant language, there's subsidiary French being taught, and the other way around.
One way of looking at Cameroon is like looking at Canada, the reverse. Because the majority of Cameroonians will be francophone, whereas the minority is anglophone, and that reverse holds true for Canada. But the first colonial authorities in Cameroon were actually Germans. They were there until World War I, 1914, 1916, when they lost their territories. In fact, including even Syria and the other territories in the Middle East, they lost all of them at the same time. They had the Germans had 4 colonies in Africa. Cameroon was not actually, it was a German colony, but when it came time to become, when the Allied forces were taking over, when Cameroon then was given over to the French and the British, because they were the last ones in there, it turns out that they struck a deal. So that Britain would have Tanganyika, which is now Tanzania, and then Cameroon, the lion's share would go to the French, and that is how one of the 4 feet being francophone and then 1 feet being anglophone. And that 1 feet they govern it through Nigeria. It's what's called Southern Cameroon. So if you look it up to see what's going on there, one of the problems they have right now is, some minority, a few, are agitating and they wish to have a Southern Cameroon, which is
Nation in its own.
yeah, it's just to be British.
On top of the English and French, there are also 5 languages that...
Yeah. 240 in all.
Oh, yes.
Different languages, yes. That's an interesting point. Yeah, they are different. They call them, the Europeans who call them dialects. But these are languages, and they are actually a total of 240 for a population which is about 22 million, which is the size of Florida population-wise. Geographically, it's the size of California. Cameroon is geographically the size of California.
And he just mentioned this, and Professor has not mentioned the fact that if you look across Africa today, there is a lot of, I would term them wars or uprising, and Cameroon relatively has been, over the years, considered relatively stable. They are the Central African Republic is being affected by war. The refugees are moving from Central Africa. A majority, as I hear, is flowing into Cameroon. Chad, the majority of refugees are flowing into Cameroon. Maybe Nigeria. For those who, okay, all right. Okay, so I think there's something that has been tying Cameroon together, and I think that's what I'd like to address this evening as well. That I think I want to give thanks to the local authority, like His Majesty, for instilling his people with some elements of hope that is come from the way they encourage us to have faith. Now, it is through the faith in action that they are willing to work with their locals. They pay attention, they listen very well. He doesn't speak a lot, he listens very well. And it's known that for over years, the challenges are many. And to shoulder those challenges, he takes this opportunity, a private visit, and then decided to figure out ways how he can begin to look at some of those impact solutions. And one of those is what I'm going to talk about, that he was able to meet with the mayor of Tyrone, and they begin to discuss about a possibility of having a sister city relationship
Wonderful.
with the region, the Kai, which I mentioned earlier, that is the center of this region that holds Kai. And I believe that through sister city relationship, it's going to lead, like it's done elsewhere, impact, result. And for His Royal Majesty to be able to make time to reach out and ask for help, to me is a point worth reckoning with. So that's what I'm going to sum up once we end up with a few presentation of what he's been doing. He took time off his private visit to begin to reach out. And I think this conversation this evening is proof of that he listened. Any more questions? Is Prince? Let's think of few. Let's go. I can.